What's up and welcome back to another live unboxing review with the MSI Stealth 14. This is going to be one of the very best gaming laptops that you can get in the ultra portable category. This has a magnesium alloy chassis. We got a full HD plus 16:10 aspect ratio display. Very high quality display, I must say. It's going to be fairly bright and very vibrant, very colorful, high color gamut, with a decently powerful CPU and a decently powerful GPU. I'm not sure that's going to be the highest performance that you can get in a 14-inch laptop, but we're going to test it out today. We're going to see what the performance is like in over 10 games. We're going to do Cinebench R23 to test the CPU performance. We're going to take the bottom off. We're going to do Timespy. We're going to analyze the internals, see what kind of upgradability this has. I can't wait to see what this laptop brings to the table. You know, we've got, it's so thin and so light. If you're looking for something that you can take with you anywhere and plug in or play games on the go, this thing is going to be able to do a lot of gaming on ultra settings in full HD plus with the RTX 4090 GPU and the high-end CPU. Now we're going to go over all of the specs that this thing has in it, including the RAM, the CPU, the SSD, the display. We're going to test the display. We're going to take the bottom off, look at that vapor chamber. And then, of course, we are going to do a ton of different games. We got Cyberpunk. We got Red Dead Redemption 2, Apex Legends, CSGO, Dead Space, Dying Light 2. We got a ton of games. The Witcher 3. A lot of these games feature frame generation as well as ray tracing and DLSS, but some of them don't as well. And we're going to be testing. So we're going to see all kinds of levels of performance in lots of different games, and we're going to be able to compare this against some of the performance of the other laptops in the segment. Now, we're also going to talk about what laptop options do you have out there besides this Stealth 14 in the 14-inch category. What are your options, right? There's a few different options. There's actually not that many out yet this year. The Zephyrus G14 and the Razer Blade 14, neither of those laptops have yet to be updated with the RTX 4000 series, at least in terms of officially available for sale. They are available in certain markets for the G14, but at least in the United States, you currently cannot buy that, at least not easily. And then the MSI Stealth 14 is available. It is available for purchase, but it's not the best necessarily price per dollar, I don't think. But this does have some features that are really nice. You got Windows Hello, the magnesium alloy chassis, providing a very light laptop, while at the same time having strong, in theory at least, build quality. We'll take a look at that today. The hinge, I did play with that just a little bit when I was setting up the laptop, and it felt fantastic. We'll show you that. We're going to take the bottom off. We're going to look at the upgradability of this laptop. We're going to test so many different games and do a bunch of different benchmarks. I can't wait to see how the Stealth 14 performs. Here is my gaming laptop list for 2023. This has all of the RTX 4000 series laptops, as well as all of the very best deals that you can get on an RTX 3000 series. All right, so this thing is a great resource if you're looking to find links on where to buy the latest laptops or to shop around with different laptops in certain price points, because you can use the filter on the left here to sort and filter everything that you're searching for, from display size, laptop weight, to pricing, to the name or brand of the laptop right here in the model field. So if I wanted to look at all of the MSI laptops, I could just type in MSI, and boom, here's all the MSI laptops for their entire lineup, as well as their pricing. So it's a great way to shop around. All right, so if we look at all of the 14-inch laptops, let me go ahead and just go down to display size, and we'll just narrow it down to everything with 14 inches or less. We have the Gigabyte Aero, the Zephyrus G14, the Stealth 14, and the Zephyrus Flow Z13, and then the Flow X13 and the Alienware X14. All right, so those are our options for potentials inside of this price range, or sorry, inside of this display size category. So everything that's less than 14 inches. Let's talk about the Alienware X14 first. Now, I did get hands-on with the Alienware X14, and notice that the RTX 4060 version of the X14 does cost $2,100, which is $400 more than the Stealth 14 for fairly similar specs, though it is a QHD screen instead of Full HD Plus on the Stealth 14. So the Stealth 14 providing a lot of bang for the buck versus the Alienware X14, but it is certainly one of the laptops to consider if you have an unlimited budget and you just want the most performance in a thin and light package. Now the Aero 14 is interesting because it's got a 4050 45 watt GPU, and we have seen that GPU can still put out pretty good performance. So it's not like you're not going to get decent performance. You're going to be able to play games on this Aero 14, no problem. And I got to say that this is my hands-on video with the Aero 14 when I was at CES, and the Aero 14 is an exceptionally thin and light machine. And I did like the feel of it, though I think the Stealth 14 is going to provide just a lot more performance. The big advantage for the Aero 14 is the 90 Hertz OLED display. So the OLED is going to be fantastically bright and high contrast. And that's pretty much the only advantage for the Aero 14. Other than that, the performance for the Stealth 14 is going to be much higher because of the higher power limits. Now, then we have the Zephyrus G14. This thing has an 8-core Ryzen chip with up to 125 watt RTX 4060. So this is a higher wattage than the Stealth 14, as well as I think going to be a better quality display on the Zephyrus G14. QHD plus 165 Hertz, 500 nits. That's going to be tough to beat. This will probably be the #1 display in this category of laptop. That said, the display in the Stealth 14 is fantastic. It's a really good display. And in some ways, you're going to get a lot more performance out of a Full HD Plus display in the 14-inch laptop, and it's going to be even harder to tell the difference between QHD and Full HD. And in many ways, I would rather recommend a Full HD Plus laptop to people over QHD in the 14-inch category, unless you just have insanely good eyesight or you're planning on doing very detailed like Photoshop or video editing work where you want to see all the little details, and you're going to be like kind of nitpicking and looking really closely at stuff. But generally speaking, you're going to be able to push out frames much better in a 1080p laptop than QHD. And then you have the Asus Flow Z13. This is also an awesome potential. It's a detachable tablet with a detachable keyboard. Sorry, a tablet with a detachable keyboard and a kickstand. I did also get hands-on with this when I was at CES. And this is going to be really cool. I would love to review this. That said, I think the Flow Z13, a tablet's not going to appeal to everyone. In some cases, this tablet's going to be a lot more of a hassle to use. For example, if you need to use your laptop in your lap a lot, then it's just not going to be as good of a user experience because it's not going to sit in your lap very well. It doesn't have a hinge that can support the display, and it tends up being very top heavy because all of the weight is in the top of the tablet. So that's probably the biggest ergonomic usability difference. But in general, this should be an excellent display and also a really phenomenal performer all around in the portable and light category. So if you're mainly going to be using your machine on a table, that's when I think this is going to be a really great option. All right, so next up we have the Stealth 14, and you can see there are a couple different color options. You got this navy blue type of color. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I think they have a specific name for this color, and then you also have this white. This white looks really good. I got to get hands-on with a white version at CES, and I gotta say the white, it just looks to me one of the best laptop designs looks wise in the 14-inch category segment. So now we don't have the Razer Blade 14 being refreshed yet. Otherwise, I would be comparing with that, but expect the Blade 14 to come out later this year at some point. So here's the Stealth 14 box. I really love the design. It's got Stealth along the top, a holographic MSI logo. That said, I kind of in some ways prefer a box that's less premium, so we focus more on the laptop, right? Because that's what I really care about. But that's it. I think a cool box design is pretty sweet. Okay, so opening this up. Shabam. Now, I also want to mention that MSI did send this laptop over. I didn't have to buy this laptop with my own money. So thank you to MSI, but they do not pay me, and I have to send this laptop back when I get done with the review. So, all right, so here is the laptop. So it's an all magnesium alloy chassis. And so you're looking at strong rigidity and overall lightweight material. You know, it's more like plastic in terms of lightweightness, but it should be rigid, more rigid and stronger than your typical plastic would be. Let's see what else we got in the box. So we've got our power cable here. The thing I look for when I'm looking at power cables is I want them to be a decent length so it's easy to plug them in. And then I'm also looking for the power adapter to be a reasonable high wattage power adapter. And this power cable is about 6 feet long, which I like that. And here is the power brick. It's a fairly portable power brick. It's a 240 watt Delta power brick, okay? So knowing that it's a 240 watt means that we're not gonna be this is not gonna be an underpowered system. This is gonna be able to push out enough wattage to really boost the CPU and GPU of the laptop to a high level, depending on how it's tuned. Now the power cable for the adapter seems a little bit shorter. It's only about 4.5 feet long or so. Now here is the manuals, and these manuals, you're gonna wanna make sure that you keep this number right here. And I discovered, so I had to actually look for this number, this 6564 number, when I was calling MSI just yesterday, and I couldn't find this little card. And then I realized that the bottom of the MSI laptops, they actually include the warranty support number right here on the bottom. So if you're ever unable to figure out what number you need to call for support for MSI laptops, you can always just find that number on the bottom of your laptop, at least on these new ones. I'm not sure about the older ones. I also found out that if you go to MSI's website and register the product, you can get an additional 3 months of warranty if you fill out a questionnaire. So you can get 15 months warranty on MSI products if you just go do that. It's pretty simple to do. So I would recommend doing that to anyone that's buying an MSI product at least. All right, so we got our little handy dandy quick guide here telling you about your ports. Interesting. So there's a woofer speaker number 17. Where is that? On the side. So there's little speaker ports on the side, on each side, left and right. Cool. All right. Well, that's a pretty basic stuff in there. I think the laptop is packaged pretty well. I don't think the laptop will be damaged under typical conditions in the middle of shipment. All right, so here, let's go ahead and do the flex test on the laptop. So starting on the right side, no flex. Ooh, I heard a little pop. Ooh, oh, we're getting a little pop action there. Okay, I'm not getting it anymore. Oh, okay, interesting. All right, going around, continuing. Interesting that we got these little ventilation holes here. I wonder what those are for. I'm just curious why we're popping there a little bit. That's interesting. Yeah, I can't get it to pop anymore. I wonder if it's like just part of the chassis popping back together or something. Just a little bit of flex as I'm going around. A little bit of flex here, but it feels more like the rubber feet going down rather than the laptop being flexed. You know what I mean? And there's basically no flex along the top, which is rare because usually there's a lot of flex along there. A little bit of flex on the right side. Going through the middle, we got some flex for sure here. I'd say a moderate amount, but that's typical around the touchpad. On the keyboard itself, we've got a minimal to moderate amount of flex, but nothing severe. For something that's so thin and light, I like to see how rigid this is. And let's go ahead and take a look at the hinge here. You can see how firm the hinge is. It is super firm, very rigid hinge, and the hinge does let you lay the laptop back all the way 100%. So if you need to share the display with something or share an image with somebody, you can do that. And you can also open this up with one hand. So that's nice to see. Overall, let's see, in terms of torquing the hinge, or like the display left and right, I feel like that's a pretty good amount of wobble, not too bad. And as far as I can tell, there is no pop-up screw. Now the two screws on the left and right sides right here and here, those are longer than the other screws. And I am using just a small Phillips head to actually get these to come up. You don't need any special screwdriver or anything to get these to come up. And as far as I know, there's no hidden screws here, but there might be. Bottom off. But before we do that, I just want to point out my awesome new shirt from Into the AM, an astronaut reading a book with, I don't know, a waterfall of color coming from it. I don't know. I love these kinds of t-shirts because they make you think about what you're looking at. They're very creative. And so this t-shirt is from Into the AM. If you're looking for some new clothes, there's a link in the description for 10% off anything that you buy from Into the AM. So thank you so much if you use that. It does help support me as a content creator. Shabam. Okay, so that was one of the easiest times I've had removing a bottom in a while. I love to see that. So lifting up the bottom, shabam. There you can see the vapor chamber all along the back here with two fans. We've got a metal shroud around the memory. Looking at our watt-hour battery, we've got a 72 watt-hour battery. We got a big speaker here and a big speaker here. So those speakers are about the same size that your typical bigger laptop would have. I like to see the bigger speakers. We'll have to see how high of quality they are. We will be checking that in a minute here. Looks like we have for our SSD. So I believe it's a Pyrite, but it's got an M, like a Micron logo on it. I'm not sure exactly. But either way, it's a 1 terabyte. We've seen the same SSD in a lot of laptops this year, actually. All right, so let's pop over to the Wi-Fi now. So we've got an Intel AX211NGW Wi-Fi card. And let me verify real quick, but I think that it comes with Wi-Fi 6E. So here's the different configs you can get with the Stealth 14. There is a QHD 240 Hz option if you're interested in that, though I generally wouldn't recommend that display option. And you can get a RTX 4070 version of this. And notice that it does claim that it's a 90 watt max for the GPU. All right, and there's 4 speakers, 2 woofers, and 2 tweeters. And then you do have USB-C with power delivery charging. So that's nice to see. And I guess and then you have a second one as well with power delivery. Oh, that's DisplayPort. So it's Thunderbolt 4, and then you have one with power delivery. And then you've got one USB-A. So that's one downside. The HDMI is a 2.1. And we came here for the Wi-Fi. We have Wi-Fi 6E with Bluetooth 5.3. All right, so Wi-Fi 6E with Bluetooth 5.3. And taking a look at our vapor chamber now, we can't really see all of the details inside of the vapor chamber, but you can see that we've got 2 fans right here with heat fins on the left and right sides, as well as 2 rear exhausts as well. So a good amount of cooling for a laptop that is this thin and light and small. And you'll see how small it is when we end up putting it side by side with all of the other laptops out there here in a moment when we put the top back on here, or put the bottom back on, sorry. And notice that this thing kind of wraps around the underside, all right? So you see how this wraps around the underside and goes over the ports as well. So I actually usually prefer it when it doesn't do that. But in some ways, this is better and worse. It depends on what you're looking for in a laptop. But sometimes it can be a bit annoying getting it to go over the ports again. Okay, so using a little plastic tool like this to get it to go over the ports can be super useful. And I didn't really mention it, but we do have 2 SODIMM slots. That was what was underneath that metal shroud. So there's you can see the material. And I want to point out, my fingers are a little bit oily right now. And look, you cannot see fingerprints on this material. How awesome is that? It's a fingerprint proof material. They actually say that right here on the little logo right here on the sticker. So zooming in on that. Magnesium alloy chassis, fingerprint proof, discrete graphics mode with a MUX. And then you've got vapor chamber cooling, matrix display, Wi-Fi 6E, Thunderbolt 4, HDMI, and I'm not sure what that little code for is right there. And then on the left, you got the stickers. I do prefer if they don't have the stickers here, but we do have a SteelSeries logo right here because this is a SteelSeries keyboard, and the keyboard does feel really nice. We're going to go over the keyboard and trackpad right now. So I'm going to get it started up. This keyboard, and here's Windows Hello. It's about to log me in. So I think the keyboard backlight, personally, could be brighter. Like in a brightly lit environment, it's not super easy to see that you have a backlit keyboard in terms of style points, right? But the thing is, for someone who's buying this laptop, I feel like this is more of like a businessy type of build to begin with. So I'm okay with the backlight not being that bright, because as long as you're in a dark environment, you're gonna be able to see the keyboard just fine. The actual layout of the keyboard, I think, is pretty nice. Notice that you have a Control FN combo key on the left here. So you got Control and FN, and you've got secondary functions along the top. So you've got mute, volume down, volume up, turn off trackpad, mute microphone. I believe that's the camera button. Yeah, turning the camera on and off. But you do also have a physical cover at the top. I'll show you that in a second. Let me show you that right now. So you have the physical cover for the webcam. So that way you cannot, no one can actually hack you or see your camera no matter what you do. So it's a physical cover. And this does come with a nice plastic layer over the cameras. So I'll go ahead and take that off. Going back to the keyboard here. Going back to the keyboard, we have the MSI Center button. So you press this and that, and you can launch the MSI Center. You can turn the keyboard backlight on, off, and different levels of brightness. It's kind of hard to see it probably. Okay, so there it's on. Then you have screen brightness up, screen brightness down, and then external monitor. I'm not sure what that button does. Oh, this flips. Whoa. Whoa. So that button flips your display. F12 flips your display completely upside down. That's cool. I've never seen that before. Anyway, all right. And then on the right side, we have maximum fans, turning that on. And you can hear the fans kick on there. You've got the crosshair button, turn off display, and pause and play. So this actually logs you out of Windows right here. This little bottom, the right arrow, that logs you out of Windows. And then let me show you the crosshair that comes up. See if we can get that to work or not. So there's the crosshair. And then you have pause and play. And then you also have page up and home as well. Now, the trackpad is a large trackpad. It's a glass trackpad, and it feels very good, very premium. It's got a nice click and a tactile feel to it. I love this trackpad. It's a very good one. It's about as good as you can get on a gaming laptop currently today. I think it's the right size as well for a laptop of this size. Like 14-inch laptops typically have small trackpads, but this one is as big as most 15, 17-inch laptops. Not quite as big as, you know, something like the Blade 16 or the Blade 18. Of course, those trackpads are huge, arguably even too big. This one is just the right size, I think, for this size of laptop to be maximizing its potential. So that's nice to see. Let me go ahead and show you the backlight and also rear RGB. All right, so here is the keyboard backlight. And right now you can see that it's per key RGB, and there are going to be 3 different levels of brightness and then off. So this is the brightest that it gets. If we go to the SteelSeries GG engine. All right, so if we go, here is the key. Here's where you control the keyboard. Per key RGB keyboard. You can set each individual key's color if you want. And then there is also some defaults that you can do. So if I zoom in over here, hopefully you'll be able to see this. So Aqua, Aurora, Chakra, Default, Disable, Drain, Freeway, Gold Splash, Plain, and Rainbow Split. We're going to go ahead and go through all of those real quick. All right, so Aqua is this one. Nice blue looking color. Aurora, this is probably the one I would use. Aurora or maybe Chakra. This Chakra brings all the different colors of the rainbow in. And then you also have Default, which is the multicolor RGB vomit. You can disable the backlight. You can do Drain, which is interesting. Everything goes into the center light. Kind of a cool one, actually. I've never seen Drain before. Freeway, which is like everything is passing in the middle. Gold Splash. Then you have Plain, which you can just basically be one color. Rainbow Split. All right, and then, so here is, so Chakra is the one I like the most. So we're going to leave it at that one for now. All right, and then we also have rear RGB as well. So we have RGB on the left and right sides. And then we also have the Stealth logo in the middle. So if you're looking straight in, you can easily see the Stealth logo. You can see it pretty well from a kind of an upward angle, but the more of an upward angle you go, the more you cannot see it. So it's kind of an interesting RGB design. We also have left and right RGB lights. As far as I know, these are not customizable. This is set like with a preset color scheme, and you cannot change it in the SteelSeries engine. So that's one kind of, I guess, plus and minus. But I think overall the look is very like clean and nice. And overall, this is obviously going to be very easy to see this keyboard. And let me also go ahead and try typing on the keyboard while we're at it. So it feels great. And then also, we're going to go ahead and go to youtube.com. All right, and notice that we also have really good, let me go ahead and turn one of these lights on again. Notice how we have really good 2-finger scrolling. All right, it's like extremely precise and very responsive 2-finger scrolling. Like, you know how like MacBooks have very good responsive 2-finger scrolling? This feels almost exactly like a MacBook in terms of its 2-finger scrolling, at least when integrated with Microsoft Edge. And not all gaming laptops have the drivers and everything set up to have as good of control of the 2-finger scrolling. So I really like the the feel of the touchpad and the quality of that feel. It just feels really good to the fingers and the touch and the responsiveness. And then this display, let's go ahead and dive into the display now. As you can see, the colors on this are really fantastic. They're very vibrant. You know, the camera is kind of picking up kind of like a pixelated pattern. I'm not seeing that at all with my eyes. I do think that this display quality is very good. I'm curious to see what we get with our display stats, which we'll test here in a moment. But before we do that, I don't want to forget about comparing this laptop size with the other laptops. So just know that I do think this display is a really good display, at least in terms of color gamut. I'm not sure about its brightness yet. I do think it's going to be a fairly bright display, but not like insanely bright. So let's go ahead and compare size now. Okay, so first up we have the Razer Blade 16. So you can see the Blade 16 is about 1.5 inches, almost 2 inches wider than the Stealth. And also notice that the Stealth is also quite a bit thinner. It also weighs a lot less. Like being an all metal, traditional aluminum chassis on the Blade series is really going to make it a lot heavier than this Stealth 14, right? Now take a look. You got to keep in mind too that the Blade 16 is the most portable 16-inch full power laptop that you can get. So the fact that this thing is so much smaller than even the Blade 16, I think bodes really well for it. Obviously, this is what it looks like next to the Strix G18, and it's comically different in size. So we're lined up along the back and left sides there. So it's like about, I don't know, a third of the size of the Strix G18. It's quite a massive difference in terms of overall size. And just to give you a side-by-side screen size comparison as well, it's a huge difference in terms of screen real estate that you get as well. So it's a pro and a con because it's so much easier to take with you. And if you're going to be keeping it in your lap or sitting very close to it, a 14-inch display is still very usable. But if you're going to want to do like immersive gaming, a bigger display is really awesome to have as well. So you got to try to find the balance between a big display and portability. But if you're looking for something that's very portable, can take with you everywhere and still do gaming, the Stealth 14 is obviously going to be a very portable option that I think is going to be balanced between performance and portability, at least pretty well. Hard to say how much better, or worse it's going to be versus the Zephyrus G14 yet, though the G14 is rated to a higher wattage. So we'll have to see. So you can see there's just a little bit of backlight bleed, I feel like right here, and then also right here. But other than that, there's basically none on my unit. Very good overall, minimal backlight bleed on this unit. It's going to vary from laptop to laptop though, so it's not necessarily a good representation of what you are going to get. But I would recommend checking it if you do end up getting a laptop. Because you may not notice, it's the kind of thing you may not notice for a long time, and then afterwards, like 2 months later, you're like, oh crap, it's really bad. When you're watching like a dark movie or playing a dark game. Is this on sale now? Yeah, you can buy this now. So important to recognize that my color tool usually underestimates the actual measurement by, I don't know, it depends from laptop to laptop and display to display, but I usually say like 8 to 9%. Right now it's estimating 96% of sRGB, 79% Adobe RGB, 79% of the P3 color gamut. So those are both very good. They're not quite 100% of the P3 color gamut though. So the G14 screen should be more colorful in theory, right? Like, so this is not going to be quite as colorful as the G14. And then in terms of brightness, it's at 0%, we'll go all the way down to 19.8 nits, which is very dim. I like to see that. High contrast ratio at the lower brightness, which is pretty typical. And then in the higher brightness, we got 412 nits, which is pretty dang good with a 970:1 contrast ratio. So overall, this is a very good display. Not quite as colorful as what the Nebula display would be, and not quite as bright as what the Nebula display will be, but this is pretty dang close, right? We've measured some of those Nebula displays at 460 nits in the G18. That's it's going to vary from unit to unit, though, right? So, of course, the mini LED versions of the Nebula displays will be even brighter than that because we've seen up to 800, 900 nits, at least on my measurement tool with those. So overall, very good results for this display. And again, the key thing to keep in mind about this display is that it is a full HD plus, so it's not as high a resolution, which means it's going to be easier to put out higher frame rates for a lot of games. So that's, to me, is the main advantage of the full HD display. Obviously, being lower resolution is going to make it a little bit harder to, or a little bit less detail in games, but I think you have to have superbly beyond excellent eyesight to be able to tell a difference at 14 inches. Because, yeah, 14 inches is a fairly small display all around. If you sit really, really close to the display as well, then I think it could also be you might be able to see the difference a little bit easier. Okay, so looks like we use Nahimic for our audio. If you want to do any specialized audio tuning to like increase the bass or adjust the treble. And then we're gonna go ahead and test the speakers now. All right, so the first up we have Peter Spacey with Roar, and we do have Nahimic enabled right now with effects on for music with bass, voices, and treble boost enabled. All right, so let's go ahead and do Peter Spacey Roar. Well, that was surprisingly good. Okay, Faded Aeon Half-Life. Very noticeable, strong and clear bass. I feel like really, so far, if there's any weakness to the speakers, it's really more just total volume, and like the mids and highs are not quite as good, but the bass is surprisingly awesome. So next up is La 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 Love You by Deuce Williams. Here we go. Okay, so man, those speakers actually surprised me, and they're much better than I anticipated, if I'm being honest. I think they're probably like they're probably like an 8.6. I don't know. It's surprising. This little guy. This thing's tiny and it's still got pretty good speakers. So man, like these speakers were basically as good as like what we saw on the GT77 or GE78, pretty close to the Scar 18, maybe just a hair behind all of those, because the total volume is not quite as good as those laptops. Those laptops have a little bit more powerful speakers, but the quality of the speakers on this was surprisingly awesome. So yeah, I'm gonna go with an 8.5 rating for the speakers on the Stealth 14, which is much better than I thought it was going to be. Now, while we have the laptop like this, I'm going to just go ahead and do Windows Hello a couple times. So I'm going to just go and log out. Oh, that actually puts it to sleep. There we go. So that's Windows Hello. So you can see how fast Windows Hello works. It works extremely quickly if you're someone who needs to, log into your laptop often, then that is really nice to see. Also, let me try testing the power button because it is right next to the delete key. So tapping the power button does not do anything. You actually need to like kind of hold the power button for a moment to actually cause the laptop to go to sleep. I like that touch because, you know, if it's next to the delete key and backspace key, I guarantee you it's going to be pressed fairly often accidentally, you know? So I've already put it into discrete graphics mode. All right, so that's really good. And then we do have 4 different options though. You've got balanced, silent, super battery, and extreme performance. So extreme performance obviously is going to be the highest level of performance that you can get. If you're going to do a lot of rendering, you probably want to use this. You can use auto fans, but anytime you're going for benchmarking performance, or you know you're going to be just slamming the CPU, GPU, I recommend using Cooler Boost because this will allow you to basically Cooler Boost puts your fans on maximum, and there's the fan noise right there. If I were to guess at how loud the fans are, I'm guessing right around the 56 decibels range. So fairly loud fans. Even though it's a small laptop, we got fairly loud fans. It's maybe 54 to 56 decibels. I really need to buy another audio checker. Anyway, so you do have super battery, silent, and balanced mode. And the other thing to keep in mind is that if you know you don't need the NVIDIA GPU, you can also go to integrated graphics mode. This is going to maximize your battery life by turning off your NVIDIA GPU, and your NVIDIA GPU will never accidentally turn on. Now, this is utilizing the MUX switch. This laptop does not have advanced Optimus. That is a downside to this laptop. This means with a MUX switch, it allows us to bypass the integrated graphics, or to switch directly to the integrated graphics, or to be in a hybrid mode. So generally speaking, unless you're going to be doing dedicated gaming, I would recommend doing hybrid mode so you don't have to restart the laptop. But if you know you're going to do it into a big gaming session all day, you don't need your battery life for a while, just go to discrete graphics mode, and then you'll be able to eke a little bit more performance out of your games, like 5 to 10%, depending on the game. Sometimes it's almost nothing. It just depends on the game. So very GPU-bound games will not really benefit from this discrete graphics mode as much as the CPU-bound games will really benefit from discrete graphics mode. Okay, so you also have some additional features. So inside of here, you can turn on and off your webcam. You can turn on display overdrive, which increases the responsiveness of your display. Basically, it kind of overclocks your display to improve the responsiveness. Display power saver. This will switch your display to 60 Hertz when you go into battery life mode. Chassis tail light. Oh, so you can turn the chassis tail light on and off. Let's test that. So it did turn off the tail light. So you can turn on and off the tail light inside of here. This is the only place that I have seen where you can turn it on and off. So let's turn that back on. USB power share. This is being able to charge like something out of your USB-A when the laptop is asleep. So if you need to charge your phone without your laptop being on, you can turn this on. And you can turn on and off the crosshair right here, as well as the hotkey, obviously. So everything here is working well. You can also disable Windows key, and you can switch the FN and function keys as well. So that's the MSI Center. For our testing today, we're going to do extreme performance mode with Cooler Boost enabled. All right. And we're also going to raise the rear of the laptop with my SSD. It's just going to raise it up about a ½ inch off of the desk to slightly improve airflow. And this is the way I test all of my laptops. So this laptop utilizes an i7 13620H processor. It's a 10-core, 16-thread part. Taking a look at our wattage pull, we're doing 102 watts right now. Wow. Okay. So 102.5 watts, 98 watts, 100.5 watts. That's really, really good. And our temperatures are also excellent at 78 degrees and 85 degrees. We are still climbing on our temps though. I'm not sure if it's going to get much worse than that or not. Also, I'm noticing that I do not have Process Lasso installed. I should go ahead and get that installed real quick just to make sure that we get our benchmarks as balanced as possible. So popping back over here, let's see what we get for our first run. 16,220. That is really, really good. I'm gonna go ahead and just do it again, and now we can go to our percentage use. There we go. And we're gonna set our priority to always be above normal. Let's go ahead and do like 4 runs here and see what we get. Then we'll do a 10-minute test of Cinebench, and we'll also answer a bunch of questions in chat. So if you've been itching to ask any questions, please get your questions ready. So we're still hitting the 100 watts of power on the CPU. That's phenomenal. 16,274. Let's go ahead and hop into a 10-minute test. Beautiful. Our temperatures are still below 90 degrees on the cores and package for the CPU. That is really good. And our clock speed right now is 4.3 gigahertz on the P cores, 3.3 gigahertz on the E cores. That's also phenomenal. MSI appears to have tuned the CPU performance really, really well in this laptop. Let's see what we're at. We have been averaging 4.15 gigahertz on all of the P cores, 3.2 gigahertz on all of the E cores. We are currently at 4.3 gigahertz, 4.2 gigahertz on all of the P cores. That's phenomenal. Our average wattage for the whole system during this run has been 89.9 watts, which is really great. Our package is heating up now. We have reached heat saturation, and we have bounced into the thermal limit. MSI seems to be limiting their CPUs at 95 degrees instead of the 99 degrees that some manufacturers limit them to. But we keep bumping into that 96 degree threshold. Our power limit drops slightly, and then it continues on with performance. Overall, though, the performance has been really phenomenal. Not much to complain about. I mean, when you look at the CPU performance of this laptop versus the other 15-inch laptops in the under $1,500 category, we are seeing higher CPU wattage in this laptop than in the vast majority, even of bigger laptops. So this right here is the Gigabyte G5, and the Gigabyte G5 is doing 75 watts of power to the CPU, and it's doing about 14,000. So that's significantly worse than what this laptop's doing, and this laptop's smaller. When we look at our 10-minute scores, that we're gonna get to the 10-minute score test here soon. So this is the Zephyrus G16. You can see it's doing 99 watts, and it is also thermal throttling nonstop as well. Pretty similar to this Stealth 14, but not quite, right? I would say the Zephyrus G16 is doing just a little bit better than this Stealth 14, but it's pretty dang close. Okay, so there's our final results. 15,881 for a 10-minute test. So this is just a tiny bit behind the Zephyrus G16. So looking at our Zephyrus G16, let's go ahead and just zip forward. 16,301. And I mean, the G16 really is a noticeably larger laptop. It's not just a little bit smaller. It's a 16-inch chassis. It's going to have more opportunity for thermal cooling, though they're both thinner and lighter machines. So yeah, in that sense, they're pretty similar. Overall, this is phenomenal performance for the Stealth 14 for CPU performance for a 14-inch chassis. Great job, MSI, on the CPU performance. I'm not seeing any problems here. Okay, so here's the webcam, by the way, if you want to check it out. It is fairly grainy, but the detail looks pretty good, I feel like. For a 720p webcam, that's a better than average 720p webcam, but overall it's about average compared to most 1080p webcams, I feel like. It's very responsive. So not amazing, but it'll work, right? It'll work. So here we are. Okay, looking at our temperatures, 52 degrees on the CPU. Phenomenal. Really phenomenal temperature there. That's insane. 90 watts. We're pegging directly to the 90 watt limit. which is great for a 14-inch laptop. I love to see that. You know, and MSI claimed it was 90 watts, and we're just hitting 90 watts constantly, which is great because, you know, some other laptops, the manufacturers, including MSI and Asus, you know, they claim like 120 watts, but they're only seeing like 100 watts most of the time, or 105 watts most of the time. So looking at our temperatures, they are climbing up a little bit, 68 degrees and 59, but that's still phenomenal. Under 70 degrees is great temperatures. Timrit says, the bezels are so small today, the actual size and weight of the new models are significantly lighter, and they look smaller on the same size monitor compared to the predecessors. Yeah, I totally agree. Good boost clocks for a 90 watt. Yeah, and we have no overclock enabled right now on this GPU either. So that's phenomenal. You know, I think from a initial impressions perspective, this laptop is going to be a great performer for its size. If you're looking for a powerful little guy, I think this guy's going to do the trick for most gamers out there, especially if you're getting the full HD plus display, which, as we've seen, is also a high quality display. You know, it's fairly high on the color gamut. It's fairly bright at over 400 nits. You know, there's not much to complain about. Whoa. We crashed. We crashed the computer. What, bro? I actually wasn't looking at the computer when it crashed because I was getting ready to do some comparisons. But I'm guessing it was in the CPU test when it crashed. It didn't crash. Oh, the laptop went to sleep. I bet the laptop went to sleep. We probably haven't set... Wait, let me see. No? What happened? I'm really confused. What happened? So we were in the middle of the CPU test, and I think, I mean, as best I can tell, Windows set it to sleep or something. That's really weird. All right, but it still gave us our GPU score. Interestingly enough, we still got 10,223 for our graphics score, which is phenomenal, obviously. It's going to be a little bit behind what we got with the Zephyrus G16, but not by much, only by a little bit, right? So let's try. So now that we have a baseline for our GPU score, let's try a overclock. We'll do a plus 225 1000 overclock. MSI Stealth 14. I'm going to replace the 4050 Nitro 5 for this test. So we're going to be in the top left for our test here, for our matching performances now here. So let's see what we get. You can see the G16 right now is doing 44. It's very similar to what the Zephyrus G16 is doing. We're beating the 3070 100 watt. The 4060 75 watt and 4060 45 watt is also being beat, which makes sense, right? The Stealth 14 is obviously performing really well overall. This is great to see. I love to see it. The Stealth 14, basically, when you compare like performance versus price, it's gonna be a good performer, but not necessarily the best bang for the buck. You're just really paying for those extra premium features because it's got the higher quality display, Windows Hello, magnesium alloy chassis, all of those things. But overall, pretty impressed right now. Keep in mind that in this test, we are right now OC'd on the we have an overclock on the Stealth 14 that we don't have on right now. The Stealth 14 with its overclock 10,841, beating the Zephyrus G16, which is a bigger laptop. Of course, the G16 does not have the overclock, But with an overclock, it was about the same. CPU score, though, interestingly enough, is the best score out of all of these laptops at 12,782. That's very interesting to see. All right, so this test, I believe, was done in 16:9 aspect ratio. Also, for the rest of these tests, we're going to go back to no overclock, right? No OC. That last side-by-side test was overclocked. Remember, we had 10,200 for the non-overclocked score. All right, so moving on. Let's go to full screen. Ray tracing on ultra. Frame generation on. All right, and beautiful. They have this new new ray tracing overdrive mode. I haven't actually tried it yet on any of the laptops, but it's tempting to try it at some point here. All right, so let me make sure that we're set up here well enough. There we go. Now we're pretty much perfectly lined up. All right, so the Stealth 14, it's doing, I'm gonna start the average. I didn't start the average at the right time, so keep in mind the averages there are not gonna be correct. But dang, the Stealth 14 is doing really well. All right, so it's basically matching the exact FPS almost for the Zephyrus G6. So we need to take a look at the end result though, right? We need to take a look at the end result to see how much is measured by the actual game benchmark. Whoa, they changed the layout here as well. So we ended up getting 86 FPS. Interesting. The Zephyrus G16 actually put out a lot more FPS at 102. Interesting. I wonder if something has changed between how the game is rendered or not rendered. I don't know. But the Gigabyte G5, I believe was it 81? And Acer Nitro 5 did 79. So yeah, I'm thinking something's changed with how the game is being benchmarked now. So we might have to redo all of our benchmarks for Cyberpunk if we want them to be exactly comparable now. Because I don't think the Zephyrus G16 was not putting out that much higher FPS. Super interesting. 87 FPS though. Obviously extremely playable in Cyberpunk 2077. We're gonna move on to Dead Space next. Everything's ultra quality, DLSS on quality. All right, so if you were to buy that Strix G15 with a 3070, it's only got 8 gigs of VRAM, but most of the new laptops have only 8 gigs of VRAM as well. So the biggest difference is just going to be, does it have frame gen, or in the games that you play, are you going to be playing frame generation based games? So here's the Stealth 14 versus the Zephyrus G15 with the 3070. So here's the 3070 performance comparison. We're doing 93 FPS right now with the Stealth 14, which is the highest FPS we have seen so far with a 4060 in Dead Space. So this laptop is performing phenomenally well, in my opinion. Better than the G16 even, which is super interesting. The G16 doing 86 FPS, the G5 doing only 68 FPS, the Cyborg only doing 67 FPS, the G15 from last 2 years ago doing phenomenally well, really, for a CPU-bound game at 78 FPS. And here we are doing 93 FPS on the Stealth 14. That is just phenomenal. So let's go ahead and move into our own test now, do a full test. Look at our temperatures as well. Usually Dead Space is one of those games that really maxes out your CPU temperatures in particular. And the vapor chamber in this laptop is doing really well. Giving us, 78 degrees is the highest I think I've seen. We have not gone higher than 80 degrees on the CPU. Phenomenal job, MSI. on cooling this laptop. Your engineers did great with the vapor chamber. Notice that our GPU wattage is only doing 70 watts right now. And we are CPU bound. We're not hitting 100% GPU utilization. At least when we're looking this way, we're only, we are CPU bound, only doing 80 something usually for most of the walk over here. See what we get. It's doing really well right now. 89 FPS for an RTX 4060 is phenomenal. This is definitely above average and higher than I was anticipating that we would see in Dead Space. This is great to see. Love it. Okay, so stopping it right there. 9544. 9544 for our final result for the Stealth 14. That is just fantastic. I love to see it. So we're at DLSS on quality, and we're 16 by 10 right now, right? All right, we're gonna do a quick test at 16 by 10. And then we're going to go do a test with 16 by 9. Okay, so we got 6327. Let's go ahead and change our resolution. It's cool how God of War is actually capable of changing the resolution. No problem in the middle of the gameplay. Not all gaming laptops can do that. And here is 16 by 9. And let's go ahead and do our comparison with the other laptops now. The Zephyrus G15 doing 55 FPS on the 3070. Cyborg doing 43 with the 45 watt 4060. The G5 doing 49 FPS with the 75 watt. And then the Stealth 14 with the 90 watts doing 63. And so is the 4060 with the 120 watt rated, but it's actually doing 101 watts, 99 watts. So it's, and we're actually doing 87, 82, 87, 85 watts on the 4060. So we are not matching the wattage, but yet we are matching the FPS of the Zephyrus G16. Super interesting and weird. You'd expect to see a little bit more FPS bump, from doing it. You'd expect to see a bit more FPS bump with the increased wattage going to the 100 watts, but we're not seeing it. So I'm anticipating basically the same FPS or very similar FPS to what we had before. Just slightly higher, maybe a few FPS more, because now we're 16 by 9 and it's a little less to render. So 66 FPS 30 for our 1% lows. That's obviously phenomenal. Love to see it. Let's move on to Hogwarts Legacy, because I think the fluidity is much better above 90 FPS just in general. So we're going to be testing with frame generation enabled. We're going to set everything to ultra. We're going to turn ray tracing on, and textures will be on low. Okay, so right here, I believe, is where we are at for this side-by-side test. You can see with the Zephyrus G16 is doing 90 FPS. We are doing 88 FPS. That's phenomenal. The Cyborg only doing 60 FPS. This is doing 50% more FPS than the Cyborg. 73 on the Gigabyte G5. 89 on the Stealth 14. Yeah, I mean, we're basically matching the Zephyrus G16, a larger laptop that's supposed to be higher wattage. Again, we're not doing 90 watts. We're doing 69 watts right now to the GPU, 49 to the CPU. And the G16 is doing higher wattage to both the CPU and GPU, and yet this is doing better performance. I'm guessing it's because we have dual channel memory in this laptop versus only single channel in the G16. That's my guess in terms of why we're competing so well with the Stealth 14. Phenomenal performance, once again, from the Stealth 14. very impressed with the optimization of this laptop. It's kind of in the sweet spot of optimization, I think. So we need to run up this area. You know, our 1% lows so far have been excellent. And interestingly enough, we have not maxed the RAM usage for some reason on this laptop. Like, we usually are maxing 16 gigs of RAM in Hogwarts, and for some reason we are not maxing the RAM right now. So the amazing part to me about this is that we're on all ultra settings with ray tracing enabled, and we're still doing 80, 90 FPS. 75 right now for our average, but depending on the scene, what we're looking at. So pop in over here. There we go. There we go. All right. So Hogwarts. Let's go ahead and run down the center lane here. 85, 83, 82, 81. It's going down a little bit as we run through this. Our 1% low, though, I'm not seeing any major stutters. I saw kind of a little. Oh, I just saw a stutter just now. Interesting. All right, so we got 79 FPS, 22 for our 1% low. We did have smooth gameplay for like 90-something%, and then we had like a load-in stutter. This is going to play Hogwarts really, really well. It's great to see it. I think that ideally you would want more RAM for this game, but that's still very, very good. All right. All right. So low settings with DLSS quality, frame generation enabled, 1080p full screen. We've got the Cyborg, Gigabyte G5, Zephyrus G16. We're doing 170 FPS with 61 for our 1% lows. We are 10 FPS behind the Zephyrus G16 right now. Our 1% lows are also a little bit worse. The Gigabyte G5 at 141 FPS. This is doing quite a bit better. The Cyborg doing 127. This is also better than the Cyborg significantly. Still better than the Zephyrus G16 with 117 versus 173. So yeah, this is doing phenomenally well overall. And it's just a little bit behind the Zephyrus G16. So that's really great. We're going to move on to our high settings now. We're going to do maximum settings, and then we're going to do our run through. So this is going to be ray tracing on ultra, DLSS to quality with frame generation enabled. So you can see full screen, 1080p, 16:9, frame generation enabled, ray tracing ultra, DLSS on quality. All of that is looking good. All right, so here is our 5-way benchmark now. Notice that we're hitting right at the 90 watt average on the Stealth 14. That's phenomenal. Our temperatures are also really great. 74 degrees on the GPU, 67 on the CPU. Let me aim just a little bit different so you can see the numbers a little better. 75 FPS, 78 FPS on the Zephyrus G16, 59 on the G5, 53 on the Cyborg. The 3070 only doing 40 FPS in this scenario. And looks like the RTX 4050 with the Nitro 5 was doing 60 FPS. So just to give you a reference there. Wow. Phenomenal. Let's go ahead and do our run through of the game here. All right. Okay, here we go. Interesting. Our 1% lows took kind of a hit right out the gate. Must have stuttered early. All right, so 76 FPS right now so far for our average, 28 for our 1% lows, which is obviously not amazing for our lows. Our temperatures on the GPU are a bit on the warmer side this time, but still well below 80. We have yet to see any game put our temperatures above 80, which is just fantastic. 78 FPS, 32 for our 1% low. Obviously, this is going to be very good performance. Like I said, though, if you were to use frame gen, I do recommend trying to target above 90 FPS because I think the game looks and plays much smoother in general, at least for a fast-paced game like this. Ultra settings with medium textures. Right. So with The Last of Us, one of the dilemmas of Last of Us is that it's going to have VRAM limitations for Last of Us. We only have 8 gigs of VRAM. The game wants more than 8 gigs on ultra settings, even at 1080p. So you have to go down to medium textures. The game still looks pretty good, but it definitely looks better when you go to high or ultra textures. So it's kind of a downside that the game's not optimized well enough. Our graphics, we are 16 by 10, full HD plus, basically. All right, and we're gonna go to ultra settings. Textures, we're gonna go down to medium on all of these. Did we turn on DLSS? I can't remember. I know this has DLSS, but I don't think we turned it on yet. All right, so we have the RTX 3070 on the left, the Zephyrus G16 with a 4060 on the right, the Stealth 14 in the bottom left. Interesting. Wow, the Stealth 14 is outperforming the Zephyrus G16 right now. Notice that the wattage pull on the Stealth is actually higher. And you remember, we have dual channel memory on the Stealth 14, so that's helping boost our performance on the Stealth. Yeah, we're performing noticeably better on the Stealth 14 right now. Of course, we also have faster memory, DDR5 memory. So that helps. Interesting. So 65 FPS versus 60 and 60 on the other two. You know, I wasn't expecting the Stealth 14 to actually beat these laptops at all. Our 1% low, interestingly enough, is not as high on the Stealth 14. Also notice our regular RAM usage is very high across all of these. Interesting. Now our FPS average is going a bit higher. Oh, interesting. For some reason, the Stealth 14 FPS went down a little bit compared to the Zephyrus laptops. I'm not sure the exact reason. You know, our CPU is pulling so much higher wattage on the Zephyrus G16. It's doing 65, 70 watts right now, which is completely opposite of what I would be anticipating right now. Still, our averages are 65 watts on both. 65 FPS on both the Zephyrus G16 with a 4060, and the 3070 is actually doing pretty well in this test at 63 watts. Or sorry, 63 FPS. You're considering it's an older gen tech. So one thing that I did want to show you now that we're in, so this is the Stealth 14 right here. You do have the option of turning on DLSS, which I didn't realize. All right, so if you go down here, you can go to scaling mode. You can go to DLSS on quality, apply those changes. All right, and now look at our FPS. We're jumping up to the 90s. So this is obviously going to be much better, much more playable. And this is the way I would run it, obviously, if I was playing on this. I would go for a closer to a 90 FPS average, as close as I can. Maybe even optimize a little bit higher to go a little bit higher FPS. Nice. Okay, so moving on to Dying Light 2. So, okay, so we've got ray tracing on high quality, full screen mode, 16 by 10 right now. Nice. All right, that looks pretty dang close. Very good performance for the Stealth right now. 97 FPS versus 88 and 56. The 3070 does not have frame generation enabled. That's the key difference here to keep in mind between these three laptops. Is that 3070 doesn't have frame gen. So, and it just can't turn it on because of a hardware limitation of the 3000 series. Doesn't have the a hardware component that the 4000 series does have. Looks like the Stealth 14's outperforming the Zephyrus G16 by about 8 FPS or so. Very interesting. Z-Balds, what's up, man? Welcome back to the live stream. Thanks for being a member. 40 series back is 40 series at the efficient graphics problem. Yeah, they're ruined with bad naming chip on laptops. Yeah, they had a weird naming scheme this year when they bumped everything by 10. Very controversial in my opinion. Tharcio, I am using FrameGen right now on the 4000 series and not using FrameGen on the 3000 series. But the 3070 is very similar to the 4000 series in terms of raw rasterization performance. Okay, so I'm not sure exactly what our number was, but it was pretty dang close to 99. Let me go ahead and look at the stream. 99 FPS was indeed the end of our stream for our FPS count. So we beat the Zephyrus G16 by about 8 FPS. And compared to a 3070 without FrameGen, it was only getting 59 FPS, which is a huge difference in performance, at least in terms of visual smoothness. Excellent. So let's go ahead and move on to Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Okay, so DLSS on quality. Minimum is our settings. Textures on high. See if it'll let us play. Looks like we crashed the laptop. No, it went into hibernation again. It is so weird. That's such a weird bug. It's like the Windows is randomly putting us into hibernation mode, which is a super weird thing. I wonder what in the world could cause something like that. I'm probably going to let MSI know about this in an email because that's kind of a weird bug. We're dominating. Okay, so our FPS is like in the 90s, which is obviously very good. We've got someone at the door. You know, the ideal for this game when you're using like the i9 chip, you're going to be getting closer to hopefully like 150. So just know that's kind of like the golden standard of the high end. Okay, so we're going to try to land in the same spot each time, so I can do my benchmark consistently. Our teammate is like, what the heck are you doing? Okay, so here we are in Warzone. Let's see what we get. My doggy doesn't want to stop barking. He bork bork. Okay, so 90 FPS with 50 for our 1% lows. This is obviously going to let us play the game pretty well, but it's not going to be like an ideal gaming experience, I would say. I mean, it'll be a good one. It's just not going to be like a super competitive one. You know, it depends on how competitive you are. If you're like the kind of person that's like, oh, I got to get like at least 120 FPS in every competitive shooter or something. There's not much more that you can do to boost the FPS on this thing. Oh, I just threw a grenade. Or something. I don't know. That's weird. Okay, so I got a sniper and a shotgun. We've got 88 FPS right now. Obviously very good. Pretty interesting. I mean, this is obviously very fluid gameplay. I'd love to be able to shoot someone, but I don't think we're going to be able to. I don't see anybody to shoot. Shwam. So our FPS has been phenomenal. Or I guess not phenomenal, but our temperatures have been phenomenal. That's what I meant to say. Our temperatures have been phenomenal. 64 and 71. Like, it shows you that you could definitely, MSI could probably put the CPU, GPU, TDP a bit higher. Phenomenal. It wasn't like the highest FPS. I wish that we could get higher FPS. But it's still very good performance, obviously, right? Like, it's going to be hard to complain about that performance level because it's very good performance for a 14-inch chassis. So here we are, 16 by 10, full screen. So we're doing more than 400 FPS, dipping it into the 500s, mainly on 500s now. It's just cranking through this game, no problem. Derek says, okay, never mind. We already read that. Since you didn't B-spot, it may have logged an error on the time. Yeah, Gonk, I would say that if you are looking for a college laptop for maximum battery life, I'm guessing, we don't know for sure yet, but I'm guessing the Ryzen 8 core chips, the new ones, the Phoenix line, they're going to be probably a bit better battery life than these Intel chips. Not necessarily that the battery life on this is going to be terrible, but if you were to go for those new Ryzen chips, I'm guessing you're going to get at least 3 to 4 hours more battery life, being, they're so power efficient on 4 nanometers. So we'll have to see. I'm a comp sci major, LOL, they say to get a gaming laptop. Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you're going to do, programs that need computational power or GPU power, you definitely should get a gaming laptop for that type of college degree. I would agree with that. All right, so we got 427.85, so 428. Okay, so no VSync. We are doing high settings initially. All right. Okay, so this display feels awesome to game on. Feels very smooth, very responsive with no ghosting that I can see. And we are not even on low settings yet. 138 FPS for our average right now. 84 for our 1% low is good. This is obviously on high settings though. So let's go ahead and set everything to low settings. And we'll reset that. All right, let's see what we get for our 1% lows now. And it feels extra responsive and buttery smooth now. 252 FPS. We'll start it one more time. But 255 FPS with 129 for our 1% low. That's really great. Our 1% low, interestingly enough, went down to 80.75. So our 1% low hasn't changed very much. We seem to be still kind of in the same ballpark for our 1% lows. But our main FPS is just phenomenal at 255. Though this is a game where 1% lows does matter a lot. Okay, our 1% lows are coming up to be a bit higher now, 130. Okay, so let's hop into a match. We ended up with 140 for our 1% low. That's absolutely phenomenal. Okay, so I've just enabled... They got a zone. That's a bad thing. Just enabled the FPS counter as we were flying there. So I can definitely hear I can definitely hear spatial audio left, right, around me, at least a little bit. But it's not very strong, so I wouldn't rely on it if I was, you know, needing to have it. How did he get up there behind me? He was just inside this room. I thought he was going to be to the right. Well, he got me pretty good. 4700 HQ, 7, it was heavy, but temps were good. Yeah, that. Obviously very good. Your first gaming laptop was a 260M. Ooh, can we get a special gun? We can. Oh. Overall, 210 FPS. We did get at least one kill. I'm glad we got one kill. But overall, very good performance. 210 FPS. Our 1% lows were not ideal, but I think that gives us a good enough example of the overall performance levels. So the cool thing about this laptop, I think, is just how well engineered it is. Like, you can tell MSI has painstakingly tried to optimize the performance of this machine so that you get consistent good FPS in a lot of different titles. They didn't shortcut this system in any way. It's got a good display. It's got Windows Hello. It's got a metal chassis. It's lightweight. It's fairly rigid. It's got a good keyboard, a good touchpad. I guess to me, the biggest downside, one of the biggest downside, is just the ports on this only having one USB-A, right? So let's go ahead and look at the ports. You can see we have one USB-A, headset port, and then we got a Thunderbolt 4 port. On the back, we have no ports at all. And on the right side, we've got an HDMI 2.1 and then a USB-C. So we have no Ethernet port, only one USB-A. You know, you're gonna have to get like a Thunderbolt 4 dongle or something if you're looking to, you know, use a lot of ports, which is usually not something I like to have to do, right? I at least like to have at least two USB-As as a minimum. All right, so right now we are doing 70, 65, 43 for our wattage levels. So 70, 45, 70, 45, 70, 48. All right, let's pop over to balanced mode. Here's the audio going down. So balanced mode, the fans are now much quieter. You can hear the fans going quieter and quieter. The temperatures have risen. We're starting to see some temperatures over 80 degrees on the CPU, but that's still not bad. Much quieter wow, the fans are super quiet now. I mean, wow, the fans are quiet. Our GPU right now is doing, yeah, the GPU is jumping around a little bit, but it's not as high as it was, right? We were doing 70, 45. Now we're doing 56, 40, 35. So we're definitely doing lower wattages than we were doing before. Our temperatures are still pretty decent. They're not amazing, but they're not bad. Let's go to silent mode. See how much quieter it gets. I truly cannot hear the fans now. Okay, maybe just a little bit. Very little. Yeah, so the fans are still going. They're still spun up. I can still hear them just a little bit, probably like 44, 45 decibels or something like that. I'm putting the mic down really close to the fans there. And we are still getting a decent decent FPS, 68 FPS. Our temperatures are higher than they were. So silent mode is going to be game friendly. Some silent modes, they completely neuter the game performance entirely, but this is going to still game, but it's going to be noticeably less FPS, right? Because, I mean, we were doing like 80, 85 FPS through here. Now we're doing 60, 65. So it's kind of like you've got a Cyborg 15 on your hands now in silent mode, because you're basically being capped in the 45 watt range for the GPU and only 30 watts to the CPU. So overall, that's phenomenal. Super battery, let's see what that does. What does super battery do for us? Whoa, super battery drops it even lower. 15 watts to the CPU, 40 watts to the GPU, 30 watts to the GPU. I'm guessing it's 45. I bet it's 60 total watts, like 45 to the GPU, 15 to the CPU. You could still game at this level, but it's going to struggle. And the fans now are... I hear the Blade 18 more than the Stealth 14. So that's kind of your super silent mode. I guess it's super battery. Interesting. And here's going to be the change back to max performance, max fans. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Okay, and here's our performance gain. Now from less than 45, 50, 60 FPS in the super battery mode, we're pumping 80 watts back through the GPU, 45 watts to the CPU, and the gameplay is much smoother once again. Awesome. So there's the different performance modes. It's very interesting to see. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up a full summary of everything that we have learned about the Stealth 14. Okay, so let's summarize everything we have found out about this guy. All right, this little dude is tiny and it feels very premium in my hands. Like it doesn't feel plasticky. It feels like a metal laptop. It's not quite as distinctly metal as aluminum, but it definitely feels a bit more premium than a plastic laptop. Now, the fact that it has all metal chassis and it's a magnesium alloy, it's very, very light, lighter than your typical metal laptop would be. It's kind of in a similar weight category as plastic, but having the more premiumness of a metal. The keyboard on this felt great. Taking the bottom off of this was fairly easy as well. And the internals, we do have some upgradability, but we only have one SSD slot, two SODIMM memory slot upgrades available. And then we have, of course, the Wi-Fi you can change out. A 72 watt hour battery should get us in the 5 to 7 hours of battery for web browsing, but it's going to vary a lot depending on what you do with it. You can kill it very quickly if you don't optimize at all. You could probably push it over 8 hours with proper optimization for just like note taking with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth off and brightness down. The trackpad on this was excellent, and I think it is overall sized just about right. Now, Windows Hello, whoa, we got Max Fan still on. Windows Hello worked really well on this laptop and logging me in consistently every time without any kind of issues or complaints. The webcam also is about average for a gaming laptop, nothing special, nothing to write home about. It's kind of grainy, lower resolution. The speakers on this were surprisingly good. Very good bass because this has two dedicated subwoofers to it. And but the overall volume level is not as loud, and the clarity in the mids and highs are not as loud or not as clear as I think they ideally would be in a better quality speaker system. Overall, I gave the speakers an 8.5, which is still very good in my opinion. The ports on this laptop are very minimal. Okay, so if you need lots of ports, you probably should skip this laptop. But the ports that you do have on it are very high quality. You do have a power adapter port, HDMI 2.1, two USB-Cs, and both of them support DisplayPort. The Thunderbolt 4, there is power delivery on the USB-C input, not the Thunderbolt 4, I believe. Not sure on that though. We have one USB-A and then the headset port on this other side. So at least you do have Thunderbolt 4 support for Thunderbolt 4 docks and other types of peripherals. That does help a lot with your Thunderbolt or your minimal port selection if you need to dock it when you get home. But yeah, in general, the ports on this are about as minimal as you can possibly get. So if you need lots of ports, I would say skip this laptop and go for a different one. But other than that, there's not too much to hate. The hinge on this is extremely rigid and it goes all the way back. And it feels very premium. The RGB on this is not very unicorn vomit. It's very professional looking laptop in general. You can turn off the Stealth logo on the back and sides, and the keyboard backlight itself is not that bright. It could be brighter in my opinion. The keyboard itself feels very good to type on and the layout is pretty good. There's obviously no number pad. This is a 14-inch laptop, and that's okay. The arrow keys are not full size, which is kind of a bummer, but you do get page up, page downs on the tops of the left and right arrow keys with home and end buttons for those. Yeah, in terms of performance, let's talk performance summary. We saw this laptop match performance with the Zephyrus G16, which is a bigger 16-inch laptop display. So it's impressive that this was able to match the performance of the G16 or beat it in almost every single game that we tested. So that was excellent. Now, there was a few games where the Zephyrus G16 I think actually did come out ahead, which makes sense because it's actually a higher wattage RTX 4060, but this has dual channel memory out of the box and that one did not. So that's probably the number one reason why this occasionally beat the higher wattage RTX 4060 and the Zephyrus G16. Assuming you'd get like a 5 to 10% performance bump on the Zephyrus G16 with a dual channel memory setup, that one should beat this one if they both have dual channel memory. Yeah, and temperatures on this were phenomenal. We never saw over 80 degrees when we had max fans running. And when you go down to balanced fans, the fan noise was very minimal, and silent mode was extremely quiet. Still providing reasonable levels of performance, about 45, 50 watts to the GPU and like 30 watts to the CPU. So that's going to allow some good gaming, especially casual gaming. You might have to turn the settings down a little bit if you're going to go down to those quieter fan modes though, because basically you're significantly kneecapping the performance by going to those quieter fan modes. But at least you have the option, like if you're going to game without headphones, you have good speakers here for a 14-inch laptop. You can turn the fans down and you can still play those games, especially if you turn some of those settings down a little bit. But then when you do have headphones, you just crank everything up to max and set maximum fans on, and you're going to get phenomenal temps, like under 70 degrees in most games, under 80 for sure, depending on the game and title. Man, yeah, and esports gaming is phenomenal. The display on this thing is over 400 nits. What did we get? Like 415, 417 nits, I think, which is very bright. The contrast ratio only being, I think, 970 to 1 was not amazing, but it was still pretty good, better than some. And then, of course, the color gamut being close to 100% sRGB and closer to like 88-ish, 87% P3 color gamut. And Adobe RGB is still very good, very vibrant display. And there was no ghosting on it. You could totally play esports on this gaming laptop, no problem. So when you compare this Stealth 14 versus the competition out there, I would say the Stealth 14 is basically like a more premium, finely tuned machine compared to something like the Pulse 15, right? The Pulse 15, it does cut some, make some budget cuts with its chassis being predominantly plastic, and the fact that I don't think the Pulse 15 had Thunderbolt 4, and the Pulse 15, the display, even though it's QHD, this one is brighter. This one has Windows Hello on it. And of course, this is an all metal chassis. So that's like, there's a lot of premiumness that you're getting with this. Even against something like the Zephyrus G14, the G14 being an all plastic chassis, where this is an all metal chassis, definitely I think gives the Stealth 14 an edge in terms of build quality and like premium all around feel. Now, I still think the Zephyrus G14 is going to be a better option for a lot of people if you need something that's like an ultra bright display with the mini LED going up to 600 nits on the G14. But I still think this is a very good option, and I don't think it's going to be like if you were to get this versus the G14, both the laptops are going to play phenomenally in games. Both of them are going to be very portable. The G14 is going to have better ports. The Blade 14 is probably also going to have better ports. I don't know. The big thing is on a 14-inch chassis, I would go with a full HD plus, which is 1920 by 1200 resolution over QHD, because QHD is not going to, you're not going to be able to tell the difference at 14 inches as much at a typical viewing distance compared to a QHD display. And if you're going to primarily play games on it, then having the additional resolution is just going to make it harder to pump out the frame rates to have great frames. So for a 14-inch chassis in general, I would recommend a full HD plus, unless you have the budget to go with an RTX 4080 or 4090, where you get the additional VRAM and you can really make sure that you're pumping out crazy frames for the QHD resolution. Now, of course, if you go to 16-inch or 18-inch, then QHD I think becomes a little bit more important because it's easier to tell the visual difference between a QHD and full HD display. So yeah, that's kind of my summary of the Stealth 14. It's kind of a phenomenal little beast. And I had almost no issues with it. The only technical issues we had with the Stealth 14 the whole time we were testing was it went into hibernation mode twice on us for apparently no reason. I don't know why it went into hibernation mode. I'm going to try to ping MSI about that, and I'll make a pinned comment if I hear anything back from them about what's going on with why it went into hibernate mode. My guess is it probably needs some kind of driver update. It looked like in the Windows Event Viewer, it might be related to the Wi-Fi card triggering something, some kind of error. But it crashed once in Timespy and then once again in, what was it? Call of Duty Warzone 2. So it was two CPU bound areas of the testing. So if you're looking for the best performance per dollar, probably don't get this. But if you're looking for something that's a nice blend of premium, good performance, good temperatures, I think this is a very viable option if you're looking for something that's ultra portable and you can take with you, and something that hopefully will be very reliable over the years, I'm hoping, because the hinge did appear to be very sturdy and solid on this laptop. So yeah, and obviously temperatures were excellent. I don't know. It's hard for me to get any major complaints about this laptop aside from the ports. If the ports work for you, Why not? I think it's a great option. So thank you so much for stopping by. I'll see you in the next one.